Hi, I'm Caveman. I started learning Godot almost 2 months ago. I didn't have any prior knowledge of game development, but I do have some basic coding experience, with Python being the only language I know. So, when it comes to game development, I feel like I'm still at a caveman level. Is it even possible for someone like me to create a game? I've always enjoyed playing computer games, but I never really thought about how they were made. Then one day, I had this thought. I want to make a game of my own. So, I started watching tutorials on YouTube. Recently, my wife bought me a PC so I could apply for online jobs. I tried, but based on my past work experience, I wasn't qualified for any of the positions I applied for. Instead of giving up, I decided to give game development a shot. I told my wife that if I can create a game and sell it on platforms like Steam or itch.io, I might be able to make a living out of it. She believes in me, and I can't let her down. Otherwise, I might be sleeping in the backyard. My first game. After watching a tutorial from the legend himself, I decided to make my first game. In the process, I learned the basics of Godot, things like creating new projects, understanding nodes, how the game runs inside the code, and how to export the game. Now, I have my very first game, and it's awesome. I told myself, well, it's not that hard, is it? Maybe I can make a game like Final Fantasy Tactics, or something similar with a 2D pixel art style. How hard could it be? That was my thought process. Next, I started a new project called Eliminate. Yeah, the name sucks. But at the time, it sounded amazing to me because I was so motivated. I began by creating a player character that would always move and face the direction of the mouse pointer. The character would aim at enemies when the aim button was pressed, shoot when the shoot button was pressed, and have limited ammo that required reloading when it ran out. I also added health to the player so they would die when it reached zero, like in most games. For the enemies, I made them attack the player on sight. Doing all that took me almost a month. I thought it would be easy because I had already created my first game, but I was wrong. One thing I quickly learned is that I still had so much to learn. Creating basic movement was easy enough without a tutorial. I just read some documentation and got help from my buddy, ChatGPT. But when it came to shooting, launching a projectile completely messed with my mental health. I tried instantiating the bullet scene inside the player's tree, but the problem was that when the player rotated or moved, the bullet would do the same, causing weird behavior. I eventually fixed that after watching the tank game tutorial by Kids Can Code. Mistakes like that ate up a huge chunk of my time. And looking back at my player code, it wasn't just spaghetti code, it was worse. It was more like lasagna code. Eventually, I lost the motivation to continue the project and decided to try another genre instead. Thinking about it now, back then, it felt like I just wasted my time working on that project. But in reality, I learned so much from it, like how to use signals, which I'd never heard of before, how to fix bugs, how to shoot projectiles, and even how to make my own sprites and game assets. I also realized something important. Pixel art may look basic and simple, but creating it is actually really hard. Undying. In this new project, I realized my skills have improved just a little bit. Here, I learned about the finite state machine, or FSM. FSM is a system where you can divide all your character's states into different nodes. This avoids dumping all your code into a single node. Using FSM makes your code so much more manageable. Imagine this: if the game throws an error in the idle state, that error stays isolated only in the idle state node. You can fix it easily without worrying about breaking other healthy parts of your code. Learning about FSM has been a lifesaver, especially when you're working on multiple inherited character scenes. Now, moving on to character building. I created a base character with just the essential nodes: sprite 2D, collision, and so on. Future characters, they can inherit from this base character, saving me both time and effort. Adding new actions later, it's as simple as dropping in a pre-made node. Another thing I learned in this project is setting up terrains and auto tiling. At first, making a map for a game is so much fun, but as your map grows larger, it becomes tedious. That's where auto tiling with terrain comes to the rescue. With auto tiling, drawing a map is as easy as dragging your mouse across the screen. The engine automatically places the correct tile for edges, sides, and even single tiles. It feels like magic, but if you're planning to make larger maps, auto tiling alone isn't enough. That's when procedural generation comes in handy. It lets the engine create maps for you using random sequences and tools like fast noise light. Now, I won't lie, getting started with procedural generation can be confusing. For example, setting up thresholds for different tiles, like water, sand, grass, it can feel overwhelming at first. But I found that creating variables for each threshold made the process so much easier. Trust me, it's worth it. Once I had a randomly generated map, I could finally start adding entities like NPCs, structures, and more. But then I hit a problem. The map only generates when you run the game. If you close the game, poof, it's gone. I searched high and low for a solution, even checked my backyard for tutorials, but found nothing. Thankfully, when I asked my buddy, Chat GPT, it came through. It suggested creating a new node, duplicating all the layers, adding them as children of the new node, and saving everything as a new scene. It worked. After a lot of bug fixes and troubleshooting, I finally had a world that I could save and edit. Now I can make up stories in that world, and that's so exciting. But I've decided to put this project on hold for now. There's still so much I need to learn to make this game truly decent. Things like enemy AI, quests, bosses, items, and so much more.